Close enough. All right. Well, we're here in the mountains. Chris, do you want to like introduce us to like where we are, like what's going on here?
Hello. So I have some family who lives in the mountains, and for my birthday, decided to come out here to visit them, and so here we are.
Yep.
In the mountains. You can see the mountains.
They're right there behind us. And
in this special episode of Brothers in Armchairs.
Yeah, this is like an exclusive. Like this is like a holiday special. Except a birthday special.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's going to be available free for everyone online.
You guys are so lucky.
We should have put this behind our Patreon because everybody's trying to get into our Patreon.
Yeah, next time we go like Brothers in Armchairs like on the road, it's going to be an exclusive, pay only to see.
That's right.
Kind of content.
Yeah, we'll probably be generous and make it like $100 to view or something like that.
Maybe like 105.
Yeah.
But, something entry level.
Mm-hmm.
So but yeah, we're still picking up on the Aquinas' 5 ways slightly. I know that we talked about wanting to also get into some other topics that we were thinking about yesterday. I know hell was one of them, which I personally still wanted to talk about.
I'm wondering if maybe it would, if we have time, we should. But I think that talking about the 5 ways and trying to like finish out kind of that whole conversation that we were having.
Sure.
I think that would be good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, in that case, did you want to? Let's see. We left off on the first way, but I don't know if we finished talking about it.
I think that we kind of did. I feel like we kind of did finish on the first way. Did you feel like you had more to say about the first way?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I know. We should have talked about this before we started recording.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll see how it goes. But the notes that I actually had are in a different notebook. So.
Oh no.
But
Will's like 5 pages of notes, so they're not here with us.
I thought I remembered them. I'm trying to remember his like the ordering though. The first one was not cause and effect, but
motion,
right? So like prime mover. If you like follow, you know what? That's kind of interesting. What would be the difference between the cause and effect one and
I guess
motion?
My damn pen is dead. Could I borrow your pen for a second?
That's a pencil. Hope that's fine.
Oh.
Actually, I have a pen in here.
I was just kidding, but that would actually be good because then we could both have a writing utensil.
Yeah. Literally always prepared, even though it may not seem like it. This is a quality pen, by the way. It's a Sharpie kind of pen. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here. Yeah, this is like literally the same kind of pen that this is. It's like
cool.
a gel pen.
Nice.
So the first one is motion.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, I believe, is causation.
Yeah.
I know that the fourth one is gradation. Like something being better or worse than something else, or more or less. It's an interesting one. We can get into that.
Yeah, I thought it was like perfection, another way of...
Yeah, kind of. The fourth one is kind of like that.
Yeah.
And the fifth one was... Is the tab still open on your computer? You can pull it up.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and do that. Is it in this...
Yeah, if you scroll down to the bottom, it's in the third article. So motion and keep going. It's each paragraph. See, or scroll up a little bit.
Oh, I see.
Causation. The third way is necessity. Oh, I actually really liked that one. We should talk about that.
Cool.
Necessity. The fourth way is gradation, and the fifth way, governance of the... Oh, yeah. Governance of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you, you had a lot of notes and a lot of questions last time we talked, and so I would be happy, I think that it could be useful to just kind of go through each one and talk about kind of our feelings and questions about each one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that, like, the place we kind of ended last time was like we were talking about the analogies of the plume of smoke and the virus,
Yeah.
and you were talking about the like uninvestigatable kind of phenomenon.
Yeah.
And, like if neither of us knew what fire was, and we looked out over the horizon and we saw a plume of smoke, we would have no means of
like inferring that
of
it's
inferring anything about what was causing the smoke.
fire. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, which is like, and like to parallel the analogy that was given, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that it was supposed to be analogous to the universe. Like the universe, in a way, is like the plume of smoke, and so we can infer that there is some underlying cause for the universe. But I think where it broke down for me was that in the analogy, they said that you can infer that it's fire, and in this, I guess, kind of, in this case, they were saying that you could infer that the universe came from God, which I would grant that the analogy would hold for me if it was like, if you could say that the universe is some kind of a, like, effect that came from a cause, but I just wouldn't know what that cause is. Similar to how, if I'm unaware of what fire is, I wouldn't be able to infer that the source is fire.
Yeah. And I guess I thought a little bit about this afterwards, and I thought that, like, you know, I would want to grant that in thinking about God and in thinking about the universe, like seeing the effect, I guess we could say, of the universe. I guess this is kind of getting into the second way of like causation and effect. That like that the causation, like, okay, I just twisted myself in a circle. I was talking, I completely lost my train of thought.
That's fine.
That was weird.
No, it's
I
fine.
completely lost my train of thought. Okay, here it is. So, like, we might not know all of the properties of a fire. I might not be able to talk about the chemical composition of the fire, or perhaps even a specific fire on the horizon. What was the fuel source? Was it gasoline? Was it wood? Is it like some other sort? Like, is it some sort of synthetic material that's causing the flames and causing the smoke? I may not be able to infer just from what I can see about the full properties of the fire, but I can still say in general that is something is burning over there, like there is a source for the burning. And in the same way, I would say we certainly, from this argument just of causation or from motion, we cannot infer all of the qualities or all of the properties of God, but purely as the first mover or as the first cause, I would want to say I think that could that be inferred from seeing an effect? Just saying, hey, here's an effect. There must be an ultimate cause. This ultimate cause we call God. But that tells us, I would never want to suggest that we can then come to know that being through, like, and know its properties and its character and its ends, its goals, its purposes from those inferences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying. I think, as for like the smoke analogy, I'm not even. So before I was saying that we could infer that there was some cause, and that we just don't really know what it is. But now I'm actually not even sure about that. I don't know if you don't know what fire is, I'm not even sure if you saw a plume of smoke in the distance that you could even reasonably infer, without investigating it, that it even has a cause and that it doesn't just exist. Like, there isn't just smoke that is there because that's like the nature of reality. Like, in some forests, you just get smoke that, I don't know. Well, I guess that's never mind. That doesn't make any sense because it would still have to come from something.
A tree is like a natural part of a forest. You would never say like, "Whoa, there's a tree. What happened to get that tree there?"
Yeah.
But it still does have a cause.
Yeah,
it still is an effect in a way.
And this is why I thought I didn't really like the analogy, because when we're talking about everything that like if we're making an analogy of things that are happening within the universe, I don't think that can be very analogous to when we're talking about the beginning of the universe itself, because every cause and effect within the universe has a natural like a natural end, a natural beginning of whatever effect you're looking at.
Yeah.
But reality itself is like where we can't really. It's harder to make that distinction of like what came before everything itself. You know, I think that's kind of for me where it's like trying to go before the Big Bang. Like, it's not even certain that it makes sense to ask the question of what's before the Big Bang, because as far as we know, as far as we were able to investigate, time itself seems to start at the beginning of the Big Bang. Which is, which may be like where we're just blocked as far as scientific investigation goes. But yeah, I think that's where I was getting hung up on, was like making naturalistic analogies to what happened before nature.
I see. Okay, that's fair. So yeah, I think I would definitely agree that, like, it's not that there's a one-to-one analogy that's like, oh, well, you know, we look at fire and we see that there's smoke and we're like, oh, there's a fire over there. And so, of course we can know that, of course, God is like the same thing. He's just like the fire, and the universe is just like the smoke. Like, duh, like, are you stupid? Like, that's not how I see the arguments at all. That's just a way of kind of illustrating the principle we are functioning on, that we're taking here.
Yeah.
Because I would never say that the 5 ways give us a certainty about the existence of God, but it's, to me, it's really just a way of seeing and a way of like inferring that it's probable that this is the case. When we look around and we see that we can know the causes of things or the sources of motion, that as we go back ultimately, like, to the beginning, then it just becomes a logical exercise and not an empirical one or a scientific one.
Right.
That if everything that we see and that we do experience has a cause, then we can reasonably infer that there is some ultimate cause of something like the Big Bang. We could also, you know, reasonably, meaning like within the realm of logic, say that, well, maybe there was something before it and then something caused that and then something caused that, and we just can't get that far back. But still, you would need to, in my mind, you have to say there is either a first cause, which is simply the functional definition of God in the 5 ways that Aquinas is using, or there's an infinite regress. Like, I don't see any other option than those 2 things.
Well, what's interesting to me is
you have to stake your claim on one of those 2 things.
I see the problem of infinite regress as just that, like, a problem that I actually don't know if it's solved or solvable, because even if you go with there must have been a, like, at some point there is a beginning, what I can't really square with that is that it seems like an arbitrary stopping point almost, because why stop there? Like, why stop at this point, which we could call God, as a primary mover, and why not extend the problem of the infinite regress and say, well, then what caused God? And to say that, to just say that there must be an uncaused cause, for me, is not strange, but I don't see how you can get around it being arbitrary, because I'm not sure what the difference would be in saying that, like, the universe just had an arbitrary stop, or an arbitrary beginning, sorry, and just saying that this cause and effect chain arbitrarily ends at God. I'm just not sure, like, how I can wrap my head around that, because it seems like the same logic that makes the infinite regress for the universe impossible should extend to God. Like, I don't know why it would stop there.
Yeah. I think I see what you're saying. Let me see if I can reframe it. So, like, why does there need to be... It sounded like you were saying, why can the universe simply not be that, like, first mover of itself?
Right.
Like the Big Bang, to use an example. If the Big Bang happened, which I think is reasonable to believe it does. I hear that people are starting to speculate as to other causes for the universe. I don't know. Have you heard anything like that?
I know the Big Bang is the most accurate, but there's other ones.
Yeah.
There's like the Big Crunch, which is like, it goes like in and out, like there's like multiple big bangs that kind of pulsates throughout.
Oh, interesting. The big crunch.
Yeah, like
It's
eventually.
it's like me when I have a chocolate bar. But that like the Big Bang may have been this first efficient cause that simply caused everything else, and it's some mysterious, like, why not stop there? Almost. Why do we need to say something caused the Big Bang?
Yeah, because like
If we're going to say that God is the kind of unmoved first mover, why not say that the Big Bang is the unmoved first mover?
right, because the way that I see it, if we're going to insert that there must be a point where this infinite regress stops, to me, we would do that for the purpose of explaining why there is no infinite regress.
Mm-hmm.
That explanation to me would have to add something new to the problem that would actually solve it. And kind of just saying that, okay, well, it must stop somewhere, so we're just going to call where it stops God. I don't see what explanation that adds to it, because then you're still left with the problem of why stop there? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you really like dig into it, then you also have to consider that, you know, if God existed before, like, okay, so there's two ways to go about it from here.
Mm-hmm.
You can either say that God existed before time,
Mm-hmm.
in which case,
which is the Christian position, I'll say.
which I would say, I mean, but that would also mean that God exists and has always existed at no time,
Mm-hmm.
which is synonymous to me with not existing. For something to exist for no time seems to be the same as just saying not existing.
I think to say that supposes that time has always existed. If something has existed for no time or in no time. Whereas the Christian position would be that time is a created thing, the same as you and I are. Time does not necessarily exist. And then we get into how to define time.
Well, I was going to say, I think the way that I define time, and the way that I think time is defined physically, is that it's just the measure of change.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have no physical change occurring, then it's the same thing as saying no time has passed. So if all the particles in the universe right now were to just freeze, and then like resume, and let's say that there's someone with a stopwatch counting how long the universe is frozen for, who's like measuring it outside of the universe, because it would have to be outside of the universe to say that time has stopped. Let's say that it stopped for 5 seconds. If you then resumed it, it would be like there would be no perceivable way to know that time has stopped. So it'd be like right now, the time that I'm saying this, the universe could have just frozen for 1,000,000 years, and we wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how something could exist outside of that, because if we're talking about something supernatural like God, the mind of God, let's say, I would assume be something that is active, something that is changing. If the mind of God is just a static state and it's unchanging, and it existed before time, then I don't see how that's different from just saying everything has existed. Like, has always existed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this is interesting. Mind of God. I think this is good. I think this might be another topic we could get into at some point, because this is getting into some pretty fine points of like Christian theology that I actually love to talk about. I'll say briefly, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then perhaps we could jump back into the 5 ways.
Yeah.
Or maybe this will lead us back into there.
Sure.
But if you want to go off on this tangent, we can. I'm happy to. But you talked about just like the idea, so time being change. And I would say that that's an unnecessary, not that it's an unnecessary definition, that's not what I'm saying, but that still time just being changed, we could conceivably say that things just freeze and there is nothing. There is no change, there is no advance of time. And I've never thought about this before, but I mean, a core attribute of God is that he is unchanging. And again, I said this is getting to some very fine points of Christian theology. And one way of putting it is there's a doctrine in the Christian faith called the doctrine of the simplicity of God. And this says that God is simple, meaning that there's not multiple pieces of God that are all like kind of competing and like working against one another, and that God's mind is not changing. He's not like, well, maybe I should do this, but I kind of want to do that, and well, but if I do that, then I'd have to do this. That God's mind is perfectly simple, in that everything he does flows perfectly from his character. Like there's no like kind of competing motives or competing thoughts. Does that make sense?
It does.
And so God is simple, and so God does not change. That would be also, we could call that the impassibility of God. That God does not have passions. Not meaning that God is not passionate, maybe in our kind of modern understanding of it, but God's passions or feelings do not sway his motivations or the way that he acts.
Yeah,
What were you going to say?
So, for me, that the first thing that strikes me when I hear that is now there seems to be an issue of free will. Because if God is perfectly unchanging and kind of just everything is already laid out and perceived, then how could God have free will? And I think that's like where that naturally goes for me, because at some point, again, I would have to assume that God would have needed, or not needed, but would have needed to have some kind of process about which he designed everything and kind of laid it all out. Otherwise, you can just say that his plan for everything has always already existed, which again brings me back to like the whole universe infinite regress. Like I'm not sure how that would be different from just the universe always having existed. Because if God, okay, would you say that, would it be fair to say that in the Christian worldview that God makes decisions? I know you may have already answered this.
I think it really depends on your perspective. I would say yes, as a human. But I would say that those decisions are not made from a place of passion, again, to get back to the impassibility piece. That to us, a way that I've heard it put before that I really liked is that God, to think about the simplicity and the impassibility of God, it's like looking at light through a prism. Like the light enters the prism on one side, and on the other side of the prism, it exits as a rainbow, right? You're following what I'm saying, like what a prism is?
Yeah. And what would the light be?
The light would be like God's will, or God's purpose, or just God's character is entering the prism. The prism is creation, our experience, our perception. And we're seeing the rainbow come out on the other side. And so when I believe, just as a Christian, that God is acting in my life, we might speak colloquially like, oh, God did this thing in my life. But if we really get down to the, brassy tacks? Is that how you'd say it?
Brass tacks.
To the brass tacks, to really like look at what am I actually saying if I want to like defend it doctrinally as a Christian. I might say that like God's character has entered into my life. I might personally say that like I've opened myself up to receiving God's love into my life. And effects are happening, but I would want to say that's only as I have like exposed myself to experiencing that light entering into the prism of my life. And I might see it as like, oh, well, now I'm going this way, and now I feel like God is calling me in this direction, and like this thing is unfolding now. But I would say that those are changes that are happening in me, and not changes that are happening in the character and the will of God.
Interesting.
Does that make sense? Am I talking crazy here?
I can kind of see that. I still, and this could be like another discussion for another time, but the free will thing still is iffy to me in that regard, because if it is kind of more like a filter, like the will of God is like a filter, which a prism is essentially filtering the light into different.
Well, I would say that our lived experience is the prism. That God's will is the light, not the prism.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So in that regard, I mean, I'm not sure where does the free will then come from? Because free will, the way that I understand it, is the ability to make decisions that are unique, in that you are able to, irrespective of everything else in the universe, spontaneously think of something that is not determined.
Yeah.
It's not
That's
predetermined.
like you would be able to do otherwise than what you have done, or something like that.
Yeah, or what you
Like right now, I take a sip of my water. I could have otherwise than done that. It wasn't determined.
Yeah. Again, like, I think that it's not something that is a closed discussion, like, about the problem of free will. Especially getting down to, like, the fundamental nature of, like, quantum mechanics and the issues with probabilities, and, you know, we're able to calculate mathematically, like, probabilities of where certain particles will be, but of course it's just a probability cloud. It's not actually, we're not actually able to, with 100% certainty, determine whether or not an electron will be here or here in an electron cloud or whatever. And so I would say, like, going beyond that is kind of just speculation at that point, since we just don't know yet. But that's on the micro scale. On the macro scale, it's a bit different. I think that there is more of an illusion of things can just spontaneously happen without being predetermined. But when it comes to God, I think you would need to either say that everything in the universe has already been determined, in which case there is no free will, or that God and man are actively making decisions in the present moment that could not necessarily be predicted with 100% accuracy. Now, I personally lean towards a deterministic universe, because that's just what I think that we have the most evidence for.
Yeah.
That's not to say that I don't think that I'm not in control of my decisions. It's just that even if I wasn't, I wouldn't know that I wasn't. And so I could act as if I have free will, not being certain that I do, and I don't think that would impact the way that I live. Because I'm forced, regardless of whether or not there is free will, I'm forced to at least be under the illusion that I am consciously making decisions that, you know, are coming from none other than me.
Yeah.
So that's what I would have to say about that. I'm just not sure where free will fits into that whole equation. Yeah, I would have to think more about that.
Yeah.
I think.
No, this is good. I think this is a good discussion to have. I think I'll suggest that we put a pin in it.
Okay.
And finish out the 5 ways.
Yeah.
Because free will, it feels like an entire other discussion to have. Which I'd love to have.
So the third way is gradation.
Yeah, well, so the third way is necessity.
Oh,
and this
okay.
actually, I think, gets back to some of what we're talking about, which is part of why I wanted to bring it back. First off, I wanted to actually respond to something you said earlier, just about, like, kind of the arbitrariness of saying, like, that God, like, is the first cause. Like, where do we put that pin? Like, where do we stick that pin if we're going to look at an infinite regression and say, well, actually, it stopped here.
Right.
Like, that's God.
Yeah.
I think just as far as the 5 ways go, like, definitionally, all we're talking about is the first cause. We're not talking about any kind of personal being or any kind of, like, omniscient, omnipotent entity that's doing all these things, and, like, oh, well, that omnipotent, omniscient entity goes here, and, like, stick the pin in.
Right.
Definitionally, for the 5 ways, it seems to me that, like, the first cause is the definition of God. So if we wanted to say that the Big Bang is the first cause, then, like, definitionally that is, like, God in just kind of this little logical bubble that we're functioning in for the 5 ways right now.
Right.
Does that make sense? So it's not arbitrary in that sense. It's just wherever that first cause is definitionally God.
I think.
And so to think of it on a timeline, I think, is unhelpful. If we think of, like, well, we know, because Aquinas is not thinking with a timeline. He's not thinking with, like, well, we know that there was the Big Bang, and then we know that, like, the gases kind of started to cool down and then form into stars, and then planets began to form. So where does God fit into that whole timeline? Aquinas is thinking purely logically of, like, we see there's a cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. logically that has to end somewhere, or we can say it ends somewhere, and wherever it happens to end, we will call that end God.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, well, there was the Big Bang, so whatever happened before the Big Bang, that must be God. I think that might be an unhelpful way of thinking about it.
Yeah. Interesting. I still okay. I could see that being like a. Would you say like maybe that being like a first premise for God would be a better way? Because saying that it is God, I think has baggage. Because
Yeah, I think for us it does. I'm just saying, like, just logically, like, for the purpose of the 5 ways, like, we could just call it the first mover. And so, like, thus we call this thing that began everything the first mover.
Right.
And, like, we don't go further than that. Like, we don't have to call it God,
right.
I guess.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I mean, I wouldn't say that it's a proof of God because, again, at that point, and I know that there's more to tack on to that. It's not just that, but if we were to just look at that first way in a vacuum, then it would be, to me, like the definition for that God is much different than, like, a fully personal, fleshed out like God.
Absolutely,
came here and
absolutely agree.
So okay, I think we're on the same page then.
Yeah. And I actually think that the third one gets at this a little bit, at like kind of the arbitrariness, it seems, of placing that pin somewhere. Like, why not just place the pin at the Big Bang? If we're talking about the Big Bang.
Yeah.
And the third way is the argument from necessity. Did you kind of pick up on this one, or what did you think of this one? I can kind of summarize it.
I might need a small rundown on the necessity one again.
When I was reviewing the 5 ways before we recorded, I actually really like the argument from necessity. I think this may be like my favorite, or what I think is like the strongest argument here.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, what Aquinas was saying, it kind of builds on the cause and effect argument. It seemed to me, to summarize, that so we have things that we can say they exist unnecessarily, meaning like they don't have to exist. Like, you can conceive of a world where this cup does not exist.
Right.
Like, it's not necessary for this cup to exist. We can conceive of a world where my family's house here does not exist. Like, this is just not here.
Mm-hmm.
Conceive of a world where the planet Earth does not exist. It's simply not here. So it's not necessary in that sense. And therefore, we can infer that there could be a universe in which nothing exists. Like, no planets exist, no galaxies exist, no stars exist, time does not exist. I mean, maybe we wouldn't want to go there. We kind of talked a little bit about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But if we say we can conceive of a universe where nothing exists, then it would be impossible or absurd, I think is what Aquinas said. It would be absurd to then assume that from that nothing came something, from like absolutely nothing, that then something caused itself. And so we can infer that there cannot only be unnecessarily existing things. There must be something, or perhaps we could even say some things, that exist necessarily, like that must exist, period.
Yeah.
Because if nothing exists, period, then nothing can cause itself. That's why I said it kind of builds on the causation argument.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Does that make sense, what you're saying?
It sounds to me, so I have like 2 things to say about that. The first thing is, it sounds to me that it's more so kind of like a law of identity almost, that everything, or like that the universe necessarily must exist because it exists. Like, it could not have been another way, or else there would be nothing. Another thing that I'm thinking of with the word necessary is, I feel like necessary implies it's a relative term, right? Like, some things may be necessary for other things, but not different things. So when we say necessary in the general sense, I'm not sure if it's a meaningful word unless it's with respect to a goal. Like, for example, this pencil is necessary for writing, but it's not necessary for scuba diving. So, and this could be necessary for other things. So, but to say that this pencil is necessary Um, I'm not sure if that's just any different from saying that this pencil must exist. It must exist because it exists, because I'm not sure what we would say it's necessary for, if that makes sense.
Well, we're not talking about an end of something
Mm-hmm.
here, like a telos, which is where it gets in the end, actually, as Thomas makes some teleological arguments of like arguments from ends, that things are aiming towards something.
Right.
We're not making an argument from ends here. I suppose in a way we are, but the end is existence itself. Like, does this necessarily need to exist? Like, can it be conceived? I suppose get rid of the word necessary. Can it be conceived that X would not exist?
Right.
I guess is kind of what we're getting at.
Yeah. So in that sense, again, I'm not quite sure, because it may just be that everything necessarily must exist because that's the only way that it could be, just via the laws of nature. I know that
Which
there's
would be kind of getting back to determinism, right? Would you say?
in a way, yeah. Maybe not necessarily, because there are scientific theories. I won't even go that far. There is speculation that there could be, like, many other potential universes with many other different kinds of laws of physics, and there's almost a natural selection of sorts that takes place in that only the universe with the laws of physics that allow for stability and coercion and order, quote unquote order, because entropy takes over in the end, as far as we can tell. So things actually do tend towards disorder in an open system, in a closed system, but that it could have just been. You could just say that it's necessary for the universe to exist because that is the only way that we could be here, but that would also.
But you can conceive of a universe in which you do not exist, and in which the universe itself does not exist. Would you not agree?
I could, but I don't know if that's relevant, because what I can conceive isn't necessarily backmapping to what can happen. So just because I can't conceive it, I wouldn't say that necessarily means that it couldn't happen, or that it could have happened otherwise. Sorry. That's why I think that's where, like, I would kind of draw a hard wall for me and be like, I may not be able to conceive it, but I would concede there are things that I can't conceive that could be the case. And I just don't know if we can intellectually jump beyond that wall. If that makes sense.
I suppose so. You're saying that it, like, because I would say, like, it's certainly conceivable that I would not exist. My parents never my parents never got together. They decided to break up, and then I was never born.
But conceivable to you.
That's conceivable to me, and I think that's perfectly logical and perfectly reasonable. So I don't understand why it would be then why we would say, well, that's not how things turned out, so things could not have been that way. That's just unreasonable, and that's absurd to say. I don't understand the jump there.
I could spin it this way. I could say that for me, it's conceivable that that chair over there doesn't need to exist.
Yes.
That it could just be gone.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say that there was someone here 15 minutes before I got here who placed that chair there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they would be able to then say that they could conceive that chair not being there because they're the one who placed it there. Not that the chair couldn't exist, but that the chair couldn't be there because they placed it there.
But we're not talking about the chair being there, we're talking about the chair existing.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I would honestly just say I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because
it was kind of a funky one. It was kind of a mind bender to think about.
Yeah.
But the more I thought about it, the more I kind of liked it. I don't know.
Yeah,
it seemed compelling to me, but perhaps I'm missing something. I'm not the god of the universe.
Yeah, we might just have. I'm not sure. So, like, I think the word "conceive" for me is the problem, because conceive for me is a subjective term.
Yeah,
Like,
I can see that.
what is my ability to understand and reason for something to be the case or not be the case? I wouldn't say that that is what has to be the case or doesn't have to be the case. I think this kind of gets into. It sounds to me a little bit like argument from incredulity. Oh my gosh,
Incredulity.
incredulity. Yeah.
I'm not. I recognize the term, but remind me what that means.
It's basically to say that because you're not able to conceive of something, that it necessarily follows that that thing cannot be false, I think.
Because something is, perhaps this is, I'm writing it down here. Because something is inconceivable, it does not follow. It does not follow that it's impossible. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, or that it doesn't follow that other causes are impossible. Like, for example, if I were to say that I can't conceive that the universe had a beginning, that wouldn't then follow that it would be impossible for the universe to have a beginning. It wouldn't make that statement false just because I can't conceive it.
Say that again.
So if I can't conceive that the universe had a beginning, that doesn't then mean that it's impossible for the universe to have had a beginning.
So because I cannot conceive the universe had a beginning.
Sorry,
I think let's stop it here. I think I'm confusing myself there.
No,
a lot.
I'm also
I'll have to look it up, and I'll look into it a little more. This is interesting.
But yeah, to boil it down to like simple terms again, I guess, is I wouldn't say that my ability to understand something dictates how the universe actually should be. So like, to say that I can't conceive, or to say that like that chair doesn't need to be there, that I could conceive that chair is not there, that it doesn't exist. I could conceive that, but I don't see what about reality that describes. Because I could conceive that it doesn't exist, but that doesn't mean that the universe could have been any other way than that. Like, all of the processes and physical interactions from however far back up until now could have been any other way. To say that, I mean, you could say that it's possible that it doesn't exist, but you can only say that because if you go back in time to like before the chair existed, and you tweak, it's like the butterfly effect. You change one thing in the past, and everything in the future could be completely different.
Yeah.
Which is another way of saying that you could conceive that things don't exist, because if you go far enough back to before they did exist, you could change reality such that they actually don't. I feel like that would be a way to define how to conceive something of not existing. That you can go back and you can change something such that it doesn't exist in the future. And I could conceive that for many things. But I don't see how, like, again, if you're talking about the universe as a whole, I can't conceive going back in time before the universe existed and changing reality in such a way that would cause the universe to not exist. So I think that's where it breaks down for me.
There's an ant trying to drink your coffee.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
I think so, and I want to say, like, if what we're saying though is that, so go back in time then before the universe existed, so nothing in the universe exists. I suppose maybe we can use the word here. There necessarily must be something there that did cause the birth of the universe, if we're going to say that the rest of the universe exists. It's kind of a blending of like the causation argument, but this is kind of what the necessity argument is getting at. In my mind. What would you say to that? That like, so let's logically go back in time to before anything in the universe existed, there must necessarily be something that exists. And I'm not saying it's God. There must be something that exists then that is then the efficient cause of the universe.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know what it is
Yeah.
or what it could be, but I would agree that
Yeah.
it's it would be I would agree that it would be nonsensical to say that something came from nothing.
Yeah.
So then it must follow that there was always at least something. Go. We have no nectar.
Bees.
Go away.
It likes my red pants and my green
Oh my
shirt.
gosh. It hit his head on the way
Now
out.
it's gone. Yeah, it did. It smashed into the gutter. No, there's another one.
Okay, so I might have been. Maybe I was overcomplicating that, but it sounds like I would agree that it doesn't make any sense. Honestly, even the concept of nothing, I would say, doesn't even make that much sense. But something coming from nothing, much less. So, but yeah, I still don't see how that gets us from something supernatural, and not something that's just natural, like a quantum field fluctuation or something. Like,
No, that gets that's above my pay grade.
I mean, well, there's like one of the other potential positive theories is that before everything, like before the Big Bang, that the universe just existed as like a quantum field, and so everything was just energy before there was matter.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
because of quantum mechanic craziness, there's some perturbation in the field that caused some particles to manifest and cause a whole chain reaction and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's speculation.
Yeah.
But
And so to kind of sorry, I mean.
No, I'm good. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's to kind of apply our to bring Thomas Aquinas into the conversation. Then I guess if we look at the causation, like, would you say that from our experience? So this is where I want to remind us that, like, we are talking about a posteriori arguments, so arguments from our experience. These are not purely logical arguments. They're using logic, but they're not like the same thing as, the bachelor was unmarried or the triangle has three sides. We're talking about logical arguments from our own experience, what we observe in the world, such as causation. Nothing is caused without a cause. There is no effect that does not have a cause. So then if we're talking about the quantum fluctuations, let's go with that. We see that, so there's some sort of quantum fluctuation that then has the effect, or that then causes matter to exist. In the Big Bang, or suddenly spontaneous existence, or whatever you want to say. Did something cause that quantum fluctuation?
Yeah, and so this gets into the idea of true randomness, which I was having a fun conversation with this on someone on a YouTube live stream, but it's not known yet if true randomness is possible, because true randomness by definition would mean something happening for no reason.
Yeah.
And that kind of gets into the weirdness of, like, if you're going to take it to the scientific extreme, that the fact that we cannot yet know things with 100% certainty means that we can't rule out the possibility that true randomness does in some way exist. And conceivably, again, speculatively, but conceivably, you could say that before the universe existed, there was just energy or whatever, and because maybe the foundation of reality does rest upon some, like, random events, that there was just some, like, random virtual particle or something that popped into existence, and, like, then kind of sparked the whole chain reaction. For me, it's a little problematic, because that does seem to imply that you're saying that something can come from nothing. Because in a way, that's what true randomness is.
I was going to say, it seems like that's kind of what we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, it's so far out there.
So, like, a truly random event would be an uncaused effect, almost, it sounds like.
Yeah. This is definitely beyond my wheelhouse.
Yeah,
because,
mine
too. But again, since it's beyond my wheelhouse, my answer would just be I'm not sure. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would lean towards there's no such thing as true randomness,
Mhm.
because for something to happen with no reason, for me seems irrational.
Yeah.
Um, so if I had to take a stance right now, I would say that matter or energy or reality itself just simply always existed, whatever that means. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I feel the same thing apply. The same issue applies with God, because would I feel like you would also have to say that God came from nothing. If God always was, then you have the same problem, in my opinion, as the universe always was. But if you say that God, at some point, popped into existence from nothing, then you also have the same problem as the naturalistic issue with true randomness and something coming from nothing.
Yeah, I mean I think that's where I like the necessity argument a lot, is that kind of gets at the root of what we're talking about. Like, there must be something that necessarily exists, and I think that kind of the basic logic of that is almost, we're talking about things beyond our comprehension, is beyond our comprehension. Like, I can logically conceive of, like, well, everything is contingent, so there must be something that is incontingent out there that, like, is the basis of all incontingent realities, or the basis of all contingent realities. And so if we're going to say that, then, like, well, there is something incontingent, but what does that even, like, mean? Like, what does that mean? What are the implications of that for time? Like, what are the implications of that for, like, where that being came from? But necessarily, logically, an incontingent being came from nowhere, but has always existed. But I would say God also created time. So using the word always isn't really helpful, because always seems to infer some sort of time span in which it always existed, but time is something that God created, so we can't say always.
Yeah, eternity.
And that's where I
time.
get confused, and I say that I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so for me, I would hang a question mark on the necessity point. And honestly, I just may have to think more about that and understand a bit more about what he means. But like, for now, I would really just say that my ability to conceive something not existing seems arbitrary, because I can conceive something that is irrational. It doesn't mean that I know it's irrational.
You could conceive of a unicorn appearing on the porch right now.
Right. Yeah, and that wouldn't mean that. Therefore, that's possible.
That's possible.
Yeah. And I forgot where I heard this quote from, but I heard somewhere someone said that being wrong feels just like being right. And so you don't know that you're wrong until it's revealed to you, but until then, you're not aware of it. So I could conceive of something and just be wrong about it, but not be aware that I'm wrong about it.
Yeah. I think that's where we're talking about, like, the logic comes in. We're using logical reason to deduce these arguments. Would you say that that's an arbitrary kind of source of knowledge?
Well, when you say logic, I mean, if we're just talking about, like, purely metaphysical logic, that I don't think really maps onto reality that well. I mean, like, you could make any set of axioms and logically deduce something that could not possibly happen in reality. So, like, I get, like, in a vacuum, like, if we're looking at it as like a math equation, sure, like, in that kind of abstract sense. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I should not have brought that up. Now we're talking about epistemology, which would be a great topic for another podcast, I think.
Yeah.
But
actually, could I just say one more thing about that?
Yeah.
I think what I was thinking when you were talking about it logically is, like, let's say that, like, if I have some entity of A, call it A, could I conceive of not A?
Yes.
And the answer to that would be yes, but that doesn't mean that not A makes any kind of sense inherently.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If we were to map it onto reality.
Yeah. We'll have to come back to this. And I guess we've been recording, I think, for about an hour now.
Really? Oh my. It
Well,
feels like
what does it say? Can we see the timestamp? What does it say
feels
on the
like
phone?
20 minutes.
I think the timestamp says.
It says 55 minutes.
Wow. Yeah. So, and so I'm not saying we should wrap up, but let's push on to 4 and 5.
Sure. Yeah.
And these are the ones that I found weaker, that I don't really understand, and I think I would need to learn more. I think it seems a bit rooted in kind of the medieval mind of Thomas Aquinas, and more of kind of his way of thinking of things. I still like them, and I would agree with them, but I don't think they're necessarily like logically sound in the way that the others are. And so let's get into them.
I would agree.
The fourth one is an argument from gradation. And so what he says is he uses the example of fire. And this kind of gets into Platonic forms, it sounds like to me, which Aquinas relies heavily on Aristotle. And so it would make sense he kind of talks about it in this way. But he uses an example of fire, for example. And he says that, so there's fire is, or he actually says fire is the source of all that is hot. So we touch something that's hot. Is there anything that's hot out here? I don't know. It's a little bit warm out here. It's kind of cool, but Will is very hot.
Sorry, bad joke.
But like it's a bit warm out here. I'm a little bit sweaty, just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like scorching hot, but I say it is hot. And we could say like it could be hotter than it is now, and we know what we're talking about, right?
Right.
It's hotter, or it could be cooler, which we could also just say it would be less hot. And like if my dad brought us out some cups of coffee right now, then we could sip them and be like, "Woo, that's hot!" Like it's hot, and we could say this is hotter than it is outside right now because this is hot.
Yeah.
Well, there's also things that are hotter than like our cup of coffee, like a fire. And Aquinas, this is where I think that this is kind of more of like a medieval worldview, that like Aquinas says that the source of all things hot is fire. That like fire is like the ultimate hotness. But now, at least scientifically, we know that not to necessarily be true.
Yeah.
Right. But I wonder, and this is really, I just really don't know. Let's talk about it. I wonder if the principle still stands that like we judge things on a gradient of their hotness, to use the hot example still, as they compare to something that like there is a characteristic of hotness that we're comparing things on a scale based, and we do that. It seems like he's saying that we kind of do that based on like an almost inherent knowledge of the ultimate hotness, and this is where it kind of gets into like Platonic forms. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, and the perfection.
Like the
thing.
perfection,
Like
there's a perfection of hotness.
Yeah.
That is like the ultimate hotness. That, and like we judge how hot things are based on that. Not saying like, oh, if the ultimate hotness is 100, this is like a 25 on the hotness. Mm-hmm. But just saying something is hot or hotter or not as hot
implies that there could be a perfect state for whatever that is.
A perfect state of hotness.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even say the perfect state of hotness is God, but like all things on a scale, like ultimately those scales all kind of ladder up to God. I guess is kind of what he's saying.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like the way that I see it is actually like you could attribute every physical property of something to like a numeric slider value. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, this thing is blue. How
like
blue?
When you're making your character in Skyrim.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like, how blue is this thing? Well, if you max out the slider, you can make it the bluest. How hot is this thing? If you max it out, you can make it the hottest. Mm-hmm. And so I guess from what I remember, maybe is, hopefully this is kind of getting in the right ballpark.
Yeah.
But that this argument that there is a most perfect state of everything that we can conceive of is, if I'm remembering correctly, evidence that there is some ultimate thing that is the most perfect of everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was confused by that argument or that proof when I first read it, because again, like for me, perfection is another relative term.
Yeah. And that's where I would agree with this argument, I think, but not like as a logical necessity. Like I believe in what he's saying, just as a Christian. I think this is part of the Christian worldview, but I don't think you can like say this is self-evident.
like
That,
that,
like that, like this some state of perfection. Like everyone knows that exists. So like, of course, like
yeah, I wouldn't say
gradation.
it's I wouldn't say
Yeah.
it's self-evident either.
Yeah.
But when I heard this is where I was like, this is definitely not a proof.
Yeah.
That was another
that's
thing
what
that
I
I was
mean.
yeah, like it's more of an observation.
Yeah.
And it's I would say like a trivial one, not a unnecessary one. It's an interesting observation, but it's I would say it's pretty trivial, and it's also kind of subjective,
Mm.
because my most perfect state of something may be different from someone else's most perfect state of
Yeah.
something.
And that's where, like, it seems to assume kind of an objective standard for perfection
Yeah,
or for like goodness,
yeah,
which I believe there is. But like, if you're starting from there and then using like that ultimate standard of perfection to prove that there is an ultimate standard of perfection, that's where I found it a bit underwhelming, I suppose.
yeah, yeah. I would agree. Um, I really have nothing that much more interesting to add to that one.
Yeah, that's what I
because
mean.
I'm
It,
just
that
kind of
seems
like,
pretty quick. I really like it. I think it's interesting, and I agree with it. I believe that there is like I think the question ultimately, I guess we could end on is like, do those sliders exist? Not like literally somewhere, but like, is there a category of greenness? Is there a category of hotness?
yeah,
And I think I would say there is, but I wouldn't use that as like a. I think it's an interesting observation, like you said, and I think it's worth kind of talking about and maybe discussing with people, but not necessarily as a logical proof.
yeah. And you know what's interesting? This actually gets into what I was reading in the Reality of Numbers book. In chapter 1, they talked about this idea of like properties given to objects, and every object has what they break it down into as a primary quality and a secondary quality.
Hmm.
And a primary quality is something, a property of something that you can describe using mathematics or numbers.
Hmm.
Like everything fundamentally is broken down into numeric values. Like even like color.
Hmm.
Color is nothing more than just wavelengths
Yeah.
of light, and wavelengths are measured in numeric values. So your blue could like be this wavelength of light, and my blue could be a different wavelength of light, which are ultimately it breaks down into numbers. Secondary qualities, I think, are properties that. Okay, I'm not going to be able to recall that accurately off the top of my head, but yeah, the idea that like you can break everything down into like a numeric kind of value and just kind of slide that to its maximum potential, whatever that is.
Yeah,
Is kind
and I
of
guess that
interesting.
would maybe kind of call into question. Well, I mean, maybe not. I haven't read the book, obviously, because like if we just talk about color as wavelengths, then we might not say that there is like an ultimate blue, because all of color exists on the spectrum of just the wavelengths.
Yeah.
Right. So that might call into question whether or not such a form of blueness exists.
Yeah,
right?
that goes back to the subjectivity. It's like
Yeah.
it would be different for everyone because that would depend on just how many light cones we have in our eyes. Like
Yeah.
it would be different.
That's interesting. I'll have to think more about that, because I've always kind of thought that color is a good explanation, not even explanation, but a good example of like Platonic forms. I'm not a Platonist, but I like kind of that idea of like there is a perfect example of something that exists only in the mind of God, I suppose, is how I would articulate it right now. But with wavelengths of color, like if you just like change the wavelength like this, all of a sudden now it's green and not blue anymore.
Yeah.
And where did the change happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's something that I don't know.
And again, the change is like it's fabricated like within the brain. Like
Yeah.
like redness, the way that we think of it doesn't actually. It exists as like an abstraction.
Yeah.
Because our brain could conceive of red being blue, or red looking like some other kind of wacky thing that we can't even picture. It's just it is a way, as far as I can tell, that our brains have evolved into just being able to observe and detect and interact with nature. And like it's like actually kind of arbitrary. Like, we don't even really need. Anyways, I don't want to digress into something else. But anyways,
So
that
then-
was all I really had to say about that.
Yeah. And the last way, and this is one that I think let's talk about it. Maybe I'll get to understand it, because I think that talking about the four actually helped me understand that a little more. The fifth one is the argument from the governance of the world. Not like governments, but what Aquinas was saying, this is kind of more of like a teleological argument, or an argument from ends. He was saying that no, it was so confusing. Governments of the world, we see that things which lack intelligence, such as natural bodies, so like a tree,
Yeah.
such as natural bodies, act for an end, and this is evident from their acting always, or nearly always, in the same way, so like a tree growing, so as to obtain the best result. Hence it is plain that not fortuitously, but designedly, do they achieve their end. Whatever lacks intelligence, so a tree lacks intelligence, cannot move towards an end, unless it be directed by some being endowed with knowledge and intelligence, as the arrow is shot to its mark by the archer. Therefore some intelligent being exists by whom all natural things are directed to their end, this being we call God.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that. Like, I agree with basically what he's saying. I think that God does direct nature, and like things work towards their end because God has designed it so. But that seems like a circular kind of reasoning, almost. I don't know.
Yeah, like, so if I'm understanding correctly, so things without intelligence,
They
are-
act towards an end. We can observe, like all
Right.
trees grow up.
without so, I mean, would that exclude human beings?
Well, I think so, since he's saying that like things which lack intelligence are directed by another intelligent being. So like the arrow obviously lacks intelligence, it's just a piece of wood.
Right.
And an intelligent being, such as a man, so he's kind of naturally calling a person intelligent, that
Yeah.
directs the unintelligent object towards the end being like the target in the archery analogy.
Yeah. So I guess in a way, like, it's saying that we direct ourselves because we are the intelligence that other things that are not intelligent
Well,
would be lacking.
He's not really getting at free will, which it sounds like is sort of where we're going with this.
Well,
to this
I'm not
argument.
really going there. I'm going
Uh-huh.
like, in the sense that, because I'm trying to like not make it really be circular. So like a community of bees in a beehive,
Yeah.
for example, like they are acting towards just some end. They would lack intelligence.
Make honey or whatever.
Yeah. And that's their goal. But I mean, people also have. I mean, people are similar in that sense. That people act, and you could even say, like, in a theistic worldview, that the end, that people are acting with the end of being closer to God, or.
Yeah. And I think this is where, I mean, like, I don't think he's getting at this. He certainly talks about it in other places, because he would want to say that, like, humans have been created with an end, or with a telos in mind. That telos being God, I think, is probably what Aquinas would say. But he's not really getting there with this. He's just saying, like, let's think of unintelligent things, such as trees. Like, they grow up, but they're not intelligent, but they're still acting towards an end. And I think this is maybe where, talking about this is helpful. I think this is where I might disagree with this proof, is that, like, he's saying, since we observe trees, they all work towards an end, which is just like growing up and growing out and becoming bigger and becoming healthier and then making other trees. Like, that is the end of a tree, I suppose.
Yeah.
In order for something to act towards an end, it must possess intelligence. I think that seems to be what he's saying.
In order for something to act towards an end, it must possess intelligence.
Yeah, and if we observe it does not, like a tree does not, then there must be some other intelligence that has designed it so, or is acting upon it to direct it towards that end.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I don't know, that sounds wrong to me, just because of, like, I see trees and they grow and I know they're not intelligent, but I consider what makes them grow to be I don't know, maybe I would say they're,
I mean, it's a procedural system. Like,
what makes them grow, but I think then it might just, like, kind of take us back to the causation argument, because I was going to say, like, because what makes a tree grow is the water which its roots soak up, and which is the soil which gives nutrients to it through the water which it soaks up, and then the carbon dioxide which its leaves breathe in, or the oxygen its leaves breathe in and breathe out carbon dioxide.
yeah.
Or is it the other way around? I don't know.
I'm not. This is embarrassing.
But like that's what makes it grow. But then you could ask, okay, well, where did the soil come from? Where did this come from? And that gets you back to the earlier arguments from causation.
I think, yeah, my analogy to that would be, I think we can make it even simpler and say that, for me, in the same way that a tree grows through like procedural, natural, predictable causes, is similar to like if you were to just take gravity, for example, and like take a marble and drop it, and you know that it falls. It's being directed by gravity, but I wouldn't say that it like intelligence is required to make that drop happen. Like in the same way that a tree growing is, you don't necessarily need intelligence. I mean, you could plant a tree, like someone could plant a tree, and that maybe you could make an argument there. But I mean, if we're talking like purely analogously here, then there is no intelligence that is necessary to intervene with the process of the tree growing to make the tree grow.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how you could extrapolate that. I feel like it seems like, again, like you were saying before, that a lot of this seems to be coming from experience.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of fallacious when you try to use like inductive reasoning to its extreme. You know, it's not perfect. We reason through induction and deduction, but we can only do that so far as making predictions. Yeah. Like, for example, if I've only ever seen 4 trees and each of them have grown to be 20 feet tall, I can inductively reason that every tree therefore grows to a maximum height of 20 feet. That would be an inductive rationale for the maximum height of trees. That's a pattern recognition, but it doesn't necessarily mean the next tree that I see will be a minimum of 20 feet tall. It could be way taller.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if, I'm guessing like where it comes from is him just saying that like we as intelligent beings act upon things that are not intelligent, and we can direct them to do certain things. But again, yeah, it seems just more like a, it's like a teleological argument.
Yeah, I mean that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Like a teleological argument, a classic example as well would be like the watchmaker.
Yeah.
Right. You've heard this. Like if you're walking through the woods and you find a fully functioning clock on the ground, you wouldn't say, "Oh, so interesting. I wonder how the natural law, like how nature produced such a magnificent natural occurrence of a clock." You would say, "Oh, a clock is here. Interesting. I wonder who made this clock."
Right.
Like, and that you can then infer the same thing about all of creation. I don't know. I haven't thought about that in a long time. I don't know if I would still agree with that argument or not.
Yeah,
I would assume you would not.
I would not, because like it's one of those arguments that at face value you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like if I were to walk into the middle of the woods and just see a perfectly set like dining room table with napkins and forks and laid out food and everything, I wouldn't assume that just spontaneously happened. But the reason for that is because we already have evidence of those things existing. In the same way that like, and you can extend that to other things that are ordered in similar ways. Like that's kind of the that's really the power in human intelligence, is that I don't need to, if I see a UFO crash, or if I just see a UFO spaceship in the middle of the woods, I don't need to say, oh, I've seen a UFO before, like we have UFOs, therefore I know this is man-made. I can say that this is ordered in such a way that is similar to things that humans would make, therefore I can reasonably infer that whatever made this is human or human-like, that has human-like intelligence.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that just because I've never seen a UFO before that, oh, nature just created a UFO.
Yeah.
But I would feel like the way to debunk this would be to say that, and it's tricky because you have to imagine something that you can't imagine seeing, which is impossible. But if I came across something in the woods that I have never seen before and is nothing like anything designed by humans,
Hmm.
then I don't think I would necessarily say that something intelligent would have designed it, because it still could have been designed, but it could have been designed from uh, like something that I just can't conceive of.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is like bordering on, can we conceive of something we can't conceive of, which is absurd.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
This
So
is kind of weird.
we can only make comparisons to things that we already know of,
Hmm.
and if it fits that description, then we can appropriately infer that it's something that has come from things that are similar to that which we know of. But to look at something that we don't know of and say that it came from intelligence, I'm not sure if we could make that leap. I guess to go back to the watch example, let's say that I was born yesterday,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know what a clock is. I've never
Mhm.
seen a clock before. I was born yesterday. All I know is what's in front of me,
Mhm.
and I walk along a beach and I see a watch on the ground. I'm not going to assume that a person made that,
Mm.
because I don't know what a watch is. I don't know what people are capable of.
Yeah.
So I think that's where that argument breaks down, is that
Hmm.
it's experiential, and to to extend that outwards through like inductive reasoning, I think
Hmm.
is fallacious.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been recording for about 90 minutes now. So I think it's time to wrap up. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think to close, I think I can say like just kind of what I think of the five ways and why I think they do give us reason to believe that God exists. And you can say perhaps the opposite or just whatever you want to say about the five ways to close.
Mm-hmm.
So regarding Thomas Aquinas' five ways, I really like them, and I think that they'd make it reasonable to believe that some sort of supreme creator being exists. I don't think they necessarily prove that. I don't even know if Thomas Aquinas was setting out to do that. Since, like we said at the beginning, Thomas Aquinas is making these arguments a posteriori from experience. And so, perhaps not in a perfectly logical way can we be certain that this supreme being exists. But I think that these five ways show that it is reasonable and intellectually defensible to believe or to know that such a being exists. They don't make it certain, but they do make it reasonable, given just the fact. And I think the strongest one for me is the argument from causation and the argument from necessity. That since we observe things that are not necessary, there must be something that is necessary, or things that are contingent, there must be something that is incontingent. And also causation. We observe things that happen, all things that happen have a cause, and so it's reasonable to believe that there is likely an ultimate first cause. That's how I would kind of wrap up.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat where I feel like necessity and causation are the most interesting. I don't think 4 and 5. No offense, Aquinas. I don't think they're that good.
Yeah.
They're all interesting,
Mm.
but it's interesting in the sense that it's more like introspective of human nature than it is determinate about the universe or reality. But causation, to me, is an open, unsolved problem in philosophy. I don't think that. We know that, as far as we know, that you can't get something from nothing, but when we're talking about the universe, it may just be that our concept of nothing breaks down. Like, what we would consider to be nothing is just not what actually was. That something was always there. And I don't necessarily see there being an issue with that, especially if we're talking about before time existing, because the problem with infinite regress, and I'll make this brief, but the problem with infinite regress is that it would be impossible to experience now if time has always existed, because there would be, if you're extending infinitely into the past, then it would be mathematically impossible to ever experience the present, because there would always be, like, you would never make it to the present. There would always be some moment that would have come sooner than now, and you would never make it to now. If we're talking about a linear progression of time, if it extends infinitely backwards, then there's no. There's another like argument that time is only the present, and that there is no like linear timeline that could possibly maybe get around that issue. I think it conflicts with relativity a little bit, because relativity does suggest that there is some kind of time stream, that there are like frames of time. It's like a four-dimensional thing that you can traverse, but let me not make this more complicated than it already is.
I'm writing this down as a future topic because actually I think time could be a good one. But
yeah, time is a good one. But anyways, what I'm trying to get at is I take issue with the word proof, because they're not proofs of God. Now, I don't think that they're that good. That's not to say that just because I don't think they're good, that like disproves God. That's not the goal. The goal is for me personally, my personal goal is to see if there are any good reasons, convincing reasons, logically for me, that could lead me to the conclusion that there is a God. I don't want to make the assumption. Like through Occam's razor, it's more logical to make the least amount of assumptions when coming to a conclusion. And that tends to be what leads you to the most accurate truth. Because when you start making the conclusions, then you can start finding other bits of evidence that fit with your conclusion, but you ignore all the evidence that doesn't, and it kind of becomes like a whole like involuntary cherry-picking thing that isn't intentional, but like if you already have your conclusion and you start to see things that are consistent with it, then that can cause problems. But so that's my issue with these ways, is that there's still a gap, and I just can't make that leap just quite yet. I would need something to fill that gap for me. But a lot of it is just I don't know. Like causation, no idea. I won't even try to speculate. Necessity is still a question mark for me. I have to think more about that.
Yeah.
But that's really all I have to say about that.
Okay.
I think this was a good episode.
Good episode. Here in the mountains.
Here in the mountains.
It's beautiful out here. It's a really nice day.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we got to do this.
It is a nice day.
Yeah. Well, thank you for tuning in to Brothers in Armchairs.
Yep.
Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you all for watching. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and also
hit the bell.
Hit the bell. Definitely hit the bell. And when the Patreon comes out, we actually partnered with Mystery Box, and we are going to never mind. This is not JW's band. I'm not going to tell like that. But thank you guys for watching. I'm going to end it now.